Hey friends, welcome back once again. So today it's an interesting topic which I've been receiving quite often as a request, like to create a content on action determinations and validations from the perspective of Restful application programming model. So hence this is the video I just created for you to share. I hope you'll enjoy this. So before we get into, rather a deep dive into the topic with hands-on, I thought to discuss about uh, something in an application and working application through which we can understand first, like how it actually works and behaves, and then it will be easy for us to lay out the architecture and accordingly create the artifacts and experience the same through an hands-on process. So what's waiting for? Let's get into this application execution. So this is a very simple working model for application, and I just created a project, you know, project records creation application rather. So I have a create button. So if I just go with creating, you'll find it something like project ID, which is kind of a read-only mode, description. Then if the project is sensitive, so kind of a drop-down, we have an option like yes, no, and the status is again a read-only mode. Side by side, you can see a project begin date and end date, both are mandatory. So in this context, what happens, like if I, let's say select the project as yes, means a sensitive, and I'm saying it's a confidential project. So, and the begin date and end date, let's say mandatory. So I don't want to give any values and just want to create it. What will happen? So logically, it will stop me because it's saying a mandatory. So I have to give some value. So let's put something over here. Let's put some value, something in the beginning of the month. Okay. And again, create. What next? Again, end date is causing a problem. Very fine. So let's put something, maybe, yeah, something like this, old. So now go for a create again. Now it's saying like this particular begin date should not be previous than the system date or current date. So that means it's asking for something, let's say future date. I just take off for the next month of June, 3rd June. What will happen if I said no? Again, it's give a problem saying like, hey, the begin date should not be lesser than the end date. Makes sense, right? So let's change it back to something like 4. Okay, 3rd June and 4th June. Not realistic dates for a project, but it's okay for the demo, right? So now if I create, what will happen? Logically all fine, successful script created. Now interestingly, you see the project ID gets determined, right? So it's a sensitive project, so it's just prefixed with S, okay, and the begin date ended as, and the sensitive rest of the information as it is, but the status is still empty. So if you go back, and you'll see this record now showing in the list. Now I can select it. I have a permission now to approve and delete. So I don't want to delete it. It will simply delete the record. Let's click on approve and see the changes. Voila, you see the status become A or approved. So if we just again go, you'll see the status becomes A. So what exactly we are trying to learn out of this application or kind of a target? The target is this called the derivation or determination. So this is the process that we are going to learn. We are a little bit learning. It's not a part of the, the concept, but something a drop down how to create and all, a simple thing very, but we'll also get into that. Obviously validations will be like the date as I just described all, and final thing is the action, which is the approving status for the record. So this is overall we are going to learn. So let's lay out the architecture, like what are the things that we need, and then we'll just create one by one, and then we'll just integrate all with coding and making this again an application, working application from scratch. So let's get into that. So this is what we're going to create, starting with a ZT project. Is a simple database table we'll be creating on ABAP on cloud. And similarly, we have a Boolean table, which will contain the value of the dropdown. Now we'll just create the interface or kind of a composite of view, which will be a root view or business object you can consider. Side by side, we'll also create a composite view out of the this Boolean table. We'll use this table as an association over here while creating the root project, and also create a behavioral definition, and we'll implement this behavioral definition where we'll write all the logics, right, which are responsible for determination, validation, and action. Next, what we'll do, we'll just create a projection out of this ZI project, and we'll attach our UI annotations. There is a way that we can create metadata extensions also, and there we can separate the UI annotations. But to make it simplified, I have kept UI annotations inside this consumption view itself. Here we'll just project the same behavioral definition at this level of the consumption view. What next? Obviously the service definition, and oh, my bad. It's basically bad thing. It should be service binding, not the service definition. Okay. So service binding, I'll correct it later maybe. So this service definition should be out of the consumption view, and from service definition we'll create a service binding. So it should be binding, not the definition. Okay. So this is overall our layout architecture, and we'll using the Eclipse ADD and we'll create the center thing. By the way, this is a part of our Restful ABAP programming series, and I'll link this video also a part of the same playlist, so that if you want to know the previous content, you probably can just search along in YouTube with Somnath, and you will get all the content easily. Okay, this one, and in the playlist you will find something called Restful ABAP programming model. So you just check this playlist, and I'll add all the content over here. Under the same playlist, so that you can just follow along if you want. So let's create the content now. Now, for the convenience, I just created this particular branch under the project ABAP on Cloud Repo. So I already explained under the branch of master the previous content about the managed service, but for this particular video I created one more branch that is called action validation and determination. If you go there, you'll find all the coding over there. So no need to just type or something. You can just watch this content well, understand the concepts, and then if you want to practice it and want to try it out in the trial account, it's very well you can do that. So I have just created all the contents. I'll be using the same repository while I'll create the artifacts, so you can follow along in the same way. So let's move on to Eclipse ADD now. So this is my Eclipse ADD. How to create an ABAP on Cloud project. This all kind of a fundamental things you can find in my Restful ABAP playlist, so you can follow along. So from here I'll just start directly the project, but I'll not spending time on those integrations. So let's start with creating a database table first, right? And you can just create a database table, put a name like ZT database project. Next, I'll just use one already created transport that I had. By the way, one thing to call out, this kind of a pop-up is nothing to do with this application. It is something, and my Eclipse ADD problem with a plugin kind of a development I was just doing. So in parallel, so maybe if something is unfinished and it's creating the issue with the pop-up. So you just need to ignore that. It's nothing to do with this application development. Okay, moving back to our topic. So this is our code. So go to database table and go to this project table, go to raw and Control A, Control C. So next is our ADT, and select all paste, activate this table. So our database table is created. It is having certain key fields, and ID field I just took it as a kind of a UID or universal ID, and there is something project ID which is to be derived. Okay, we just explained. There's the rest of the fields, as you can recall. The last 4 fields is all about kind of an administrative fields, kind of who created and what time, etc. So this is not just for the tracking the things. So let's create one more table. As we know, that is the ZT Boolean table. And meantime, let's go back to our repository, and we'll find this Boolean. Click on draw, and meantime it's finish it, and we have already copied the code. So now paste it, and now we can activate. So what next I want to do, I just need to create one more class through which we'll just fill the record, yes, no, this Boolean values. So let's create a class now, above class, and we call it just CL fill Boolean table. You can add one interface if you want, but anyway the code to do have that is called interface editing class run. This is one to I add. Let's click on finish. Let's go back to our project, and we have something called the class, right? So let's go to classes, and we'll find the code called JCL fill Boolean, and just copy the enter code. Nothing to change, and you just paste it. That's all. So what I have just added, kind of a type and value. These two values I just want to add. Key is the yes, and the value is yes something. And if it's updated successfully, I'll give a console message like successfully updated. So just activate this class, and just now if we just open dictionary and database, open this Boolean, right click, open with data preview, you'll see nothing is there, empty. So let's run this class, and this is our class, right click, run as, and this is the console. Everything runs fine, then successfully updated. So that means if I go back and click on this refresh, I'll be able to see these two values. Awesome, right? Simple. So now the first two tables created and one class created. What next? As per our planning, we need to just create these two views. One is the root project, and side by side one composite view for this Boolean table. So start with this root project first. So for that, go here. This time we'll go for a data definition. Okay, and we'll call JI project. That is called CDS view something, whatever it is. So now reference object should be the project, the database table that we created. Okay, so I'll just select this database table, and next is the transport, and here I can select certain the template. So what to select, I don't have much. Let's just root view entity, we can select it anyway. We'll be just pasting our code, nothing much, but I wanted to show, like, you just need to follow along if you are looking for the template. Okay, so let's go back to our GitHub repository, and now what to look for, and we have to just go for a CDS. Okay, there we'll go for data definition and GTGI project raw, and copy this enter one and paste it back, and let's explain what it is doing. So first thing is, like, here it's giving a complaint that my CI boolean, which is yet to be created, right? So where is that? Yeah, just wanted to say this particular GI boolean is still missing. We'll be creating it, right? So it's complaining for this reason. That's fine, and I'm just setting up the is sensitive and with the type of that boolean table, so that we're just putting a join, one demand join or differential join kind of association. I'm just doing it side by side. This is interesting. This will be using it as a value help. Okay, search help kind of a drop down rather. So you just carefully notice it, and it will be applicable on the is sensitive particular field on which this drop down will be applicable. So I'm not going to save it, but I'll not activate because it will create a syntax error until we create this GI boolean. So let's create one more table, new data definition, at this time ZI boolean. So just CDS boolean. Now referential object should be what? Obviously the table that we created. It's coming automatically because I already used the same information while I'm creating a demo application. That's what's coming up, but for you, you may need to select it. Anyway, let's move on. What next? Just finish it up. That's it. So this is created. So what next? Coming back to our project once again, and this time we need what we need. We need our ZI boolean, right? It's simple view. So let's go back our Eclipse, paste it. So this is GI boolean and nothing. It's just having a type and this. Important thing is this size category should be access. This is what you need to use it, right, for your drop down kind of a things, capabilities. And now activate this one, or you can just say both and activate together. Okay. So what will happen? This project and boolean both I want to activate together because it's a dependency. If everything fine, I'll see a message like it's activated successfully. It's a problem. Let's go see. It's a warning, so I'm just ignoring this for the time being. So let's move on to the next layout. That is something a behavioral definition that we have to create, right? So what we can do, we can go for the package level, and you can go for other, or maybe for the for this coded service new, there is something called behavior definition. Either way you can do that. So it should be Z one thing you can also do it, I can say, like maybe you just open this one, right click, and there also you can do new behavior definition. Then you don't need to type much, everything will be selected for you automatically, much easier. Here is the option that is managed and unmanaged, but currently we'll be using the managed one. Okay, so go for a next. What will happen? Just click on finish. Meantime, we'll go back our repository and we'll just get the coding from there. And where is our, go to CDS, go to the folder now, behavior definitions, and go to this CI project, go to raw, and just Control A and go back and Control V. Carefully notice, because this is what is happening. Our main project view, focus should be in this behavioral definition and implementation. So this is a managed one, and it's saying this class I have created behavioral pool, and we have to create an implementation out of this class that we'll do shortly. Interestingly, this talks about how I'm just want to lay out the fields on the UI. I want to say like this two fields should be mandatory during creation time and read only during update time. These are all my read only fields because kind of a administrative one. Anyway, it should not be visible for me. Interesting here, the ID field which I selected is called the numbering is managed, because I'm not going to generate the number, right? Every number will be managed by the framework, but the project ID I'll be deriving it. So that is a separate concept. You see, don't get confused with this ID and project ID. ID is just an UID, we just explained last time, and this project ID is a derived field, like is as a prefix or as a sensitive project that we have explained during the demo. I hope this piece is clear. So let's move on. These three things, adding the CRUD capabilities: create, read, update, delete. So this is what three things. Now this is our point of interest in this episode. So this is the action, which is something, the context on which I'll be applying the action. That's why this $self, okay, where this action will be applied. It's an instance based, of course. And the method which is responsible or attaching to our event handler is called set status. That is the event handler. Now this is the validation for the dates, and it will be applied on save of the records, and the fields applicable on these validations is begin date and end date, as we have explained. The last one is derived project ID is called a determination, and it will be working on modify. Interestingly, it just works on the create time, okay, and it will not work in the edit mode and our update time rather, okay. So make sure you just follow along. I can put an update also here, but it will not be reflecting this way. Cool. This is very important of the mapping, because the consumption view of how this fields are being alias been created, and this is my exact database table field name. So if it is not same, then you have to create a mapping. Otherwise, those fields will be empty and you'll be looking frustrated, like you are saving the data, but the content is actually not being reflected in the database, right? So this mapping is very, very important. So what next? Let's activate this code. Yeah, we are here to implement this class. We should not forget. Activation is done. So let's click on this yellow kind of a marker and you will find something called create behavior implementation of this class. Double click on that. It's all set. Click on next and now go for finish. Meantime, we'll go back to our code repository and we'll get out of not behavior definition because we're creating an implementation. It's a class. So go to the class kind of the folder and you will find something called ZBPI project ABAP. So this is not the main class, it's the local types. I'll explain why. So go to raw first. Now what happened, before we copy and paste, let's go back to the Eclipse and see this is the global class created, but all we have to do in the local type tabs. Okay, so all the fields that you can probably can now relate to, set status, derived project ID, validated dates, those all methods can auto, the signature and things are auto created, but the implementations are pending. So what we'll do, we'll go back to our code and we'll copy the implementations from starting from the get instance feature till end of this method. Okay, don't forget method. So now I'll remove all the implementation codes. It's empty. Now paste it. So all our logic it's now pasted. Okay, so let's understand one by one what's happening. The first one is the set status. So it's an action kind of things. And what is telling, it's telling like, hey, update the entity on which I'm applying the approved action and set the status as A. And if any error happened, fill up the error, fill table otherwise, and also the reported table as a kind of a signature of this particular method called set status. And now it's the read entity, because whatever we created, we just need to read the entities and we need to populate the result table. So this control is not needed. Let's comment it out. So I just forgot to remove it initially. So let's remove this one. This is not required. This is sufficient with the ID value which got generated. So that I can know like which are the records on this which gets updated. And finally, we'll just get those values and as a for loop. This is an ABAP 7.4 and 5 kind of a coding pattern. So, and I'm looping through and finally filling up the result table. Kind of a restricted ABAP. You always remember it's not the full-fledged ABAP. As a restricted ABAP, certain things it's not working, unlike we do in the backend system. You should be, this is basically called an EML, entity manipulation language, kind of a thing that you need to apply in this ABAP on cloud. So this is the first method we explained. Like once I click on approve, how just you update it to A, as I have seen A, and then it just read the content on which the things updated, and finally filling back the result table to list down in the project list. Simple thing, right? So let's go to the derived project ID. Means I want to derive the project ID based on the drop down selection. Is a sensitive project or normal project. Similar way, read the entities first, whatever the records been you want to apply, and then delete all the records for which already project ID is filled in, right? So because we don't need to derive for the already created one, so we just deleted it. And then if lines are there, we are just as per my logic, I'm just getting the full count. Maybe this is not required. I'm not using it actually. Initially I thought to use it, but it's okay. I just comment it out. It's not needed. So what I'm doing now, I'm just modifying now the content with like, if it is kind of a conditional value, if the drop down contains y, then you just put it as a as a prefix, otherwise put it as n as a prefix, n for normal and s for sensitive. So this is the second method. Make sure you just report the information back to this reported things. All right, so derived projects, you probably can understand, right? How it's deriving the project based on the drop down value, and as a conditional way I just generated the project as per this condition, like it says time low, and it's not the well-proof logic, just giving a demo. Okay, because on the same day or maybe different day, we have the same time, may have the same time, it's a conflict, right? So just a demo purpose. Your business logic will definitely be more complicated and more productive. Let's go to the validate dates. So it first reads the begin date and end date, and then it loops through all the records and it's just checking if the begin date less than the current date as you have explained. Then it just fill the message, and I've just created one kind of a class, message class, and I'm just filling those numbers so that it just automatically report it to. Similar way, if the begin date greater than the end date, which is really not possible for a project or realistic project, I just want to show a different message. And this one, this kind of a mark on and this mk on, this kind of things is applicable for which field? I mean, when both the things are causing a problem, then both the things will be marked, right, as a red color. Otherwise a single field, because if the begin date is less than system date, there is no point to mark both end date and begin date. Rather I just want to mark the begin date, something like that. Okay, cool. So the methods been explained. What next? Activate the class local types. Okay, so let's activate it. Let's see if there's any problem. Hopefully everything will be fine at the end. I didn't get any message though, but also didn't find any complaint or problem, so assuming it should be all fine. Okay, so let's close all. So how far we have arrived? So we basically created this root project, definition, implementation, all three done. Next is we'll have to just create the consumption view, as well as we have to take a projection of our behavioral definition at the consumption layer. So let's create a consumption view first. So for that, go to data definition, right click, new data definition. We call it jet_c proj. It's a consumption view, but for which one we want to create a consumption view? Of course, GI proj, that's the data definition, right? Once I create a consumption view, let's finish it off. Go to our repository meantime. So let's go back to our ABAP cloud repo once again. Go to database tables and go to, oh, not here, right? My bad. It should be CDS because we are doing a CDS view. So go to data definitions and you will find this called GC project over here. The naming is, don't get confused, the naming should be actually GC project, not GC. I mean, there will be a underscore before. Make sure this you're following along. So what next? That's it. So let's go back. This is the project. This is what it's actually creating a projection on. These are all the UI facets. I mean the detailed view, how it will be arranging all the fields or elements across the screen, kind of a grouping. Or you are just creating a target qualifier, okay, or field group rather. Next, ID. This is also hidden. I don't want to show. Project ID is all kind of will be applicable to the line level and list level. Then it will be a selection also, as well as I just told in which field group they should be appeared. Similar way, all same thing, not to explain much. One important thing here to call out is the status, because on which our action will be performed. So all things are same. You can check, only this particular piece is different because it's an annotation saying like it's for action, and this is the method name, and the label of the button is called approve. Okay, this is what just the annotations applying on this particular status field. All good. Let's activate this. Our consumption view should be done. So it is not actually an OData publish the true is required, because we are will be registering it as a service definition and service binding. So it is not needed. So let's move on to our what should I say, this JSP project, right click and go for behavioral definition. What will happen? Carefully notice it is now selected as projection of the behavioral definition. Okay, that is applied under this JDI proj. So the same thing will be projected. Means we are basically creating this particular green piece. So let's finish it off and I'll be having my things ready. Nothing to do, just activate it. So this is all projection is set. Cool, lot of things we have done already, right? So next two things are pending: service definition and service binding. It should be bindings. Let's fix it now itself. Okay, service bindings. Save it. Okay, cool. So let's go to this package once again and just create new and other. You call it service. So we are going to create service definition first. So JSD service definition for project, service definition, and here the type is a definition, so that I can select the consumption view just created, because on which you'll be creating this definition. So let's move on, finish, and now it will be just exposing this content. Instead of GC project, I can put an alias, let's say project list. Okay, all set. Let's activate this one. Now only one thing is pending for our demo to start, and that is the service definition. Right click, new service binding, sorry, service definition we just created. Now service definition, we can search it JSD, and we can create service binding for the project and give a naming service binding. What happened? Oh, my bad. Binding type is important. Shall be using OData v2 UI. Okay. Next is simply finish it, right? Now, what happened? You have to just activate this artifact first, and then you will be seeing this publish button enabled active. Now click on this and it will basically publish your overall view, consumption or root, whatever the entire application. It will be published as an consumable URL, so that we'll be testing it as a preview mode. This is not the exact Fury application that you can think of it, but just kind of a preview, right? Not the actual Fury application. That's an awesome way SAP has created with the smart elements and smart controls. It's taking a little time. Let me just take a pause. I'll come back once it's generated. Looks like the publish is done, and now I have this project list and JDI boolean. I just need this, the below one, project list. Double click on that. It will open in preview mode, and you have to just log in it first time. Hey, cool. The application is all ready, right? It's a preview mode. You can see the project ID and project description coming back as a selection screen. If there is a create button also, approve and delete is disabled. We don't have any data, so obviously makes sense, no data found. Let's create a fresh record, and now you can see the drop down, right? You know how to create a drop down. Let's create an ES and call it an SAP Black project, right? So again, let's put a begin date as yesterday's date, and in date something on 26. What will happen? Obviously I'm expecting a problem with here. It will complain saying like, hey, this should not be before system date. We have just seen it, just redoing the same just to ensure our all things are working fine and everything fine. Create record created successfully, or first entry created fine. You see it's predefined with S because it's a sensitive project. Go back and you see the record. So if we just create one more record and say like SAP implementation project, create, what will happen? You see N suffixed because default is a N. It's not a sensitive project, so it's not a sensitive, so default is N. What next? So let's select this one and I want to approve this now. Voila, it's approved now. So if we go there, approved, and I want to delete this record. Yes, I want to. Cool, it's selected. One thing I want to call out now, it's you just carefully notice, if we just go there, click on edit, and if I now change back to normal, ideally it should become in because it's the normal things, but explained this derivation and determination works during the create mode, not in the update mode. Even if you put update over there, nothing will happen. So if you just click on save, you see the project become in, but it is still showing a. So just to call out, this is the kind of a constraints, and while you design your application, you keep this particular behavior in mind. All set. Thanks for watching. I hope this discussion was helpful to you. We'll soon connect with the next episode. Till then, goodbye.